Welcome back to the Snap Count, a future subsidiary of Clutch Sports. I am Emilio Caleb, and I'm joined by the head of our Texas delegation, Caleb Catlin. We are almost at the conclusion of the 105th season of the National Football League. So today we're here to talk about the culmination of that season, which is Super Bowl 59, which is a rematch of Super Bowl 57 between the history-seeking Kansas City Chiefs and this year's very unlikely antihero, the Philadelphia Eagles. Caleb, this was our first year talking about football semi-regularly in this format. In one word, phrase, or sentence, how would you describe how this season has gone?
Chaotic.
That was
Chaotic
more,
and
that was more elegant than me because mine was what the fuck.
yeah. I was avoiding evil because there was a couple of like interesting narratives, so it wasn't completely evil, but it was certainly chaotic just to get me back in the same spot that I didn't want to be at.
Yeah, but in a way, that's like a backhanded compliment in a cosmic way to this season, in that we're here in the inevitable, which we talked about at the beginning of the season, which was the Kansas City Chiefs making the Super Bowl. And yet it was still a very entertaining season. And so we'll see what the whether it's a period or an exclamation point on this season per se.
You really need to believe that it's really about the journey and not the destination. You really, really have to believe that.
That's what you're going with.
And
Sometimes it's the destination. Today I'm going to say it's the journey.
usually I'm pretty happy to get to the destination. This time I'm just gonna have like the sightseeing was fire.
And yes, as for mentioned, Super Bowl 59, a rematch of Super Bowl 57. Let's start with the tail of the tape. The Kansas City Chiefs, the AFC's number one seed, finished the regular season 15-2 against the Philadelphia Eagles, representing the NFC, who are the number two seed at 14-3. Pretty much I'm not a betting man, but pretty much every sports book and their mother has the Chiefs favorited by just about a point and a half, or some are even a flat point, which I think is kind of funny. The Chiefs are looking to become the first team in the Super Bowl era to three-peat. The Super Bowl era, of course, being post 1966. They are looking to join the Green Bay Packers as the only other franchise in NFL history to three-peat. The Packers having done it twice in 1929 to 1931 and in 65 to 67. So, of course, two of those three wins in the second three-peat are the first two Super Bowls, but they would be the first to do it all in Super Bowl era. And as for topical news, of which we didn't have a lot, there were reports of illness spreading through the Eagles camp. 4 or 5 players dealing with the flu, in quotes, per Lane Johnson to the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jalen Carter notably did not practice on Wednesday, but he and everyone else on the Eagles was a full participant on Thursday. So it's looking like we're going to get two healthy teams against each other. Moving on, we're going to start with the Kansas City side of this, narratively speaking. Andy Reid's going to be coaching in his 45th career playoff game, passing Bill Belichick for most in NFL history. He can become the third coach in NFL history to win at least 4 Super Bowls, joining only Chuck Dole and Bill Belichick.
Let me mention real briefly, Bill Belichick ran from the grind. Andy Reid taking over his spot.
We're sowing the seeds for off-season potting, as you can see.
Ran to North Carolina. He not about this NFL shit.
As for his quarterback, that of course is Patrick Mahomes, our resident Kermit the Frog cosplayer. He's going to be playing in his 5th Super Bowl, looking to surpass Troy Aikman's 3 rings and tying Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana's 4 rings. That's quite a club, obviously. On the Philadelphia Eagles side, I've actually got a lot for you. You're gonna love some of these. This first one especially. Nick Sirianni is going to become the 5th youngest head coach of all time to coach in a 2nd Super Bowl, and it's a pretty great club. The 4 coaches younger than him: Joe Gibbs, Don Shula, Mike Tomlin, and Sean McVay. And right behind him is Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts is going to join Patrick Mahomes, Matt Stafford, and Russell Wilson as the only active quarterbacks to play in more than 1 Super Bowl. Just for posterity, the only other active quarterbacks to play in one at all are Jared Goff, Joe Flacco, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo technically was in 3, but of course he was on the bench
That's
for
more like
2 of
his
those.
company right there. That's his
2
company.
of those. On the more fun, positive side, positive for you, I guess. This is a fun one. I didn't know until yesterday. Devonta Smith can become the 5th Heisman Trophy winner to win a Super Bowl and a national championship. And this is a great club. The other 4, the 4 who have done it are Reggie Bush, Charles Woodson, Marcus Allen, and Tony Dorsett. That's a great fucking club, man.
This is
That
great
is
for my agenda as an Alabama guy too.
as a Bama boy, notably.
We're currently down and out right now, so I'll take what I can get.
Noted, not notably not an owner of Jalen Miller stock, but I don't want to get
Oh,
too far
fuck no.
into the. We could spend
Well,
the next hour, and Caleb could be
we're gonna
like
leave
angrily
quarterbacks
fisted.
out of this.
That's the off season pod. That's the off season pod. And to round out the Philly history and the books, this guy's got a whole section for me. Saquon Barkley. He's stamped himself in the record books already. He was the 9th player in NFL history to top 2,000 rushing yards in a season. One of only 2 players in NFL history with at least 400 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns in a single postseason. No, you do not get any prizes for guessing the others. Terrell Davis, and he's only 30 yards shy of breaking the NFL total season rushing record set by Davis in '98 when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. He's currently at 2,447 yards, and Davis had 2,476. And as a fun one, which I also learned yesterday, Super Bowl Sunday is going to be Saquon Barkley's 28th birthday. And it will also be Cooper DeJean's 22nd birthday. And this is like, I'm getting really into the weeds here. If you add together Saquon Barkley and Cooper DeJean's jersey numbers, 26 and 33 respectively, you get 59.
Put the tinfoil away. We're not doing
Of course, I did bury the lead with some of that, which is to say that Saquon Barkley also stamped himself in the record books as the Offensive Player of the Year for the 2024 NFL season. And that will also make it 2 consecutive years that the Chiefs will be playing the Offensive Player of the Year in the Super Bowl.
the
So
the league is cowards for not giving him MVP, by the way. I know we don't factor that. I know we don't factor the postseason to shit, but I've always found that kind of bogus. But that's a separate conversation.
separate conversation is also who won MVP. But again, I don't want to spoil our conversations. But all that said, so well, yeah, let's start with that unit. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And I will start also by saying that the Chiefs have not allowed a single rusher to eclipse 90 yards this season. That said, I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just going to say this is it, right? You have to let Saquon Barkley put the exclamation point on the season, and you have to trust him to take you all the way to the finish line. Like I think, again, like we are facing the great evil, and I don't say that like to be funny. Like we're talking about
I mean this
the
shit.
franchise of the 2020, the literal dynasty of the 2020s. So I get it, but when it comes to like the way this offense has been, like I don't think you have to do anything special. Like I think you just trust what got you here. I don't
Yeah.
know how you if you agree with me on that.
No, I agree. I also wanted to note, particularly just as a general observation, that
Mm-hmm.
just looking at some of the next gen stats, I mean, Jalen Hurts been throwing some real short boys instead of those real ugly, deep by the numbers type of deals, which should hopefully throw a little bit of unpredictability in the matchup, unlike their last outing where Jalen Hurts was really trying to force that bitch in. There's that clip of him throwing a big old, shit stain at the very on that very last play. But yeah, I mean, if anything's going to do it, it's going to be the Saquon run, and I'm pretty interested to see how they plan on going about this when we eventually get to the Chiefs defense, because that's going to be a pretty big eye opener and which side of the field they favor.
I will say, like, as much as that clip deservedly gets like circled around of Jalen Hurts' last Hail Mary attempt in Super Bowl 57, I didn't write down a stat line, but a lot of people forget like he did play a really great game. Like he played his best football in the Super Bowl, which is like as much as you can ask of any quarterback of any talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the Saquon of it all makes it. Like, I don't want to get into predictions, but like it makes me feel good about it makes me feel better. There's a better word about this Eagles offense in this game compared to when they played in 57, even against like a still very stout Chiefs defense, because it just adds the unpredictability. I got some good stats for you. Um, Saquon outside the tackles this postseason, 344 yards and 5 touchdowns on 37 carries. That is a 9.3 yard per carry average, and that's of his 442 yards total. For what it's worth, over the season, the entire season, he's rushed for 1,050 yards from shotgun. He's the first player in next gen's stat era to rush for more than 1,000. So I think I do think as much as I'm emphasizing Saquon for the obviousness of it, that Saquon also like Jalen Hurts, like as much as both of us on this pod have criticized Hurts for being very limited for a quarterback, like what he does well, like this like does play into that very much. And he is still throwing to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and obviously the matchup is going to be Trent McDuffie and AJ
Mm-hmm.
Brown. I don't want to shotgun too quick into the defensive side of things, but I do think that just given off of how AJ Brown was rocking, I'm very curious how AJ Brown works in those press coverages, and
Mm-hmm.
if Hertz has the confidence and the ability to shake off Chris Jones related pressure when it comes time to throw those balls to AJ Brown.
Yeah, I think I mean, we're going to talk about the Chiefs defense next, but kind of mixing in both here. Yeah, Smith and McDuffie is going to be the matchup, but Chamari Connor is an interesting one to watch here, who's really great in run defense, and he's okay in coverage. And so I'm interested to see how the Eagles attack him in that second level, who are really great at stopping the ball, at stopping the run and getting to the ball in pursuit. We're talking about, of course, like that linebacker room, Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal, Drew Tranquil. But I'm curious then, I guess, I think the Smith McDuffie battle is straightforward in a way. And so I'm interested to see how they work Smith in the slot and like moving him in and out outside. And then Dallas Goedert, too, who quietly has been really great in this postseason. Obviously, Saquon has all the headlines, but I've got some stuff for Goddard. He has 178 yards on 14 catches from 11 personnel this season. That's the most by any tight end in a postseason since Travis Kelsey in 2021. He Jalen Hurts has completed 13 of 14 attempts for 240 yards when targeting Goddard on third downs this postseason. Just this postseason. And just to take it all the way there, when Dallas Goddard's on the field, the Eagles are averaging 6.3 yards per rush. Without him, it's 4.9. And specifically, when they rush strong side, and mostly when on the side that he's blocking, 5.8 yards with him on the field and 3.9 yards without. So Dallas Goedert, I think, is going to be quietly the guy who makes things happen for this offense, both as a run blocker and if they can get him to leak out, especially like we'll see how that battle works out in the secondary. But yeah, if they I'm really curious, like formationally, what Kellen Moore does in this game. Like if he goes a lot of heavy, or if he tries to put guys out, if he tries to put Smith and Brown out wide. Like how much Jahan Dotson are we going to see? Like I think like not so much for Dotson, with all due respect, but more so for functionally, like how will that space the rest of the team? I'm really interested to see how that happens.
Yeah, I've been interested just, I guess maybe philosophically about how Kellen Moore runs his offense because we know him as somebody who's more pass heavy, and to see Saquon sort of all encompass that offense, it's interesting to see how he alters formation just based off of that. Like, all right, how do I change? How do I maximize the run? Since we know him as a pass heavy guy, like he gets into like the weeds of formation to maximize that rather than get into the passing itself.
Yeah, like I think that is another small wrinkle that makes me feel good about this offense is that, yeah, more notably, I mean, of course, coming from Cowboys, working with Dak Prescott, which is, I mean, he ran a great offense with Prescott and he really maximized Prescott's like downfield throwing. And then you had the one weird year with the Chargers with Herbert, and that that offense just like wasn't super talented, frankly. Um, but this year, he's got Saquon, and he's very much like, I'm gonna let you cook. Like, I don't have to like tinker with this. I just need to get you good blocks. Which I did write this down. Like, I'm really excited and I'm curious for the first time that Kelmore calls a run, and he pulls like Landon Dickerson out, and I'm really curious to see how that battle goes. Like, where, like, depending on where Chris Jones is on the line, and like, yeah, even just what side they attack, like whether it's Dickerson, like if they pull him from left to right, or Mekhi Becton from right to left. Like, I'm really interested to see like how they go about that, like what sides of the defense they attack, depending on where like McDuffie and or Chamari Connor is playing on the Chiefs side.
Yeah, to add to your point, and again, we keep teasing the big Chiefs defensive aspect of it, but I did write pretty in bold lettering that Chris Jones has always been the X factor in these games, and I noticed in watching some of the footage from the Chiefs and Ravens game that there was a lot of play calling for Derrick Henry where they shifted like pretty exclusively away from Chris Jones, where they ran a lot to the left side of the field, and Chris Jones had to catch up to the play in order
Mm-hmm.
to sort of neutralize things. Obviously, that sort of swung differently, especially when he got to Lamar. But I am curious because Derrick Henry is more of a power back and Saquon is more of an elusive kind of runner.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder how that sort of shifts the tides for Philly.
Um, my last note on the Philly offense, which we can use to transition into the Chiefs, talking about the Chiefs defense. To your point, I think this is oddly one of Jalen Hurts' strengths, is reading the defense at the line of scrimmage. So I think, in Kellen Moore, who's a very safe, sound play caller, and in Hurts, who reads defenses fairly well in the pre-snap, I think that will be a fun, intriguing battle to watch. Like, yeah, like I'm sure that, yeah, they're going to look for Chris Jones and shift their protection around based on that. A little wrinkle that is boring to bring up, but is potentially the most important thing, is the health of Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens here. I'd like to note that Chris Jones recorded exactly one pressure in Super Bowl 57.
Mhm.
But this offensive line is just not as good as that one was, like
Yes.
flat out. And we did see this offensive line was not at its best. Again, Jurgens did not start at center. Dickerson started at center, and Dickerson, who was fine, played one of his worst, not a bad game, but by his standards, one of his worst games of the season against a good, but not as good as this rushed defensive line, uh, playing against the Washington defensive line. I meant in the NFC Championship. Yeah, they're going to be coming up Chris Jones, the spearhead of this Chiefs defense. Um, before we get into the into that specifically, the hurts of it all aside, like, yeah, like, so how do the Chiefs defend Saquon Barkley? I'm really curious to watch.
Yeah, and
um,
just to wrap back to, and noticing that Derrick Henry was running more towards the left and avoiding the Chris Jones of it all. In the
mm,
commies game, Saquon also showed. I looked at the chart of his runs, and even though he had two of his touchdowns on the right side of the field, which is usually where Chris Jones operates, he
mhm.
took a lot of runs to the left. So I wonder if that's an active decision or if they try and double down on the protection on the offensive line and try and run through them, or I don't know. I think he has the elusiveness to effectively run away from him, functionally speaking.
Functionally speaking, yes. Like I said, that's why I'm like really like super. It's like one of my favorite, like, my things I'm gonna look for in this game is, yeah, like, I'm glad you brought up the actual chart, because I totally forgot. Like, yeah, they they have tended to favor using that gap on like the left side, Landon Dickerson's side, the Eagles, I mean. But when they pull him from left to right, then that, and he gets a full head of steam. And like, once Saquon gets into the second level, then he's like gone for 20 plus basically. Um, and on the Chiefs' defensive side, even before we even get to Chris Jones, like, I'd like to know, George Karlaftis has quietly been having a really great postseason, and I don't want to disrespect the man, but Michael Dana, who's been not great for this Chiefs defense, did have five, I think, why I should have written this, 4 or 5 pressures against the Bills, against a very good offensive line. But that was specifically at rushing the passer. So I think when you have a guy like Saquon, obviously the Bills have Josh Allen and James Cook, also a very great running back. But we are talking about the literal offensive player of the year. So I'm curious, to see how Spags will kind of reel them in terms of we need to try and get to Hurts, but also we need to be disciplined and like stay in the gap. He's got a lot of options. Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, in terms of, you have Chris Jones, obviously, but you've got Chamari Connor. I'm really interested to see where he plays as safety. Is he going to have him playing in the box, or that's for that reason? I think the AJ Brown of it all, which I think we're all taking for granted, which
Well,
is
it's
really interesting here
honestly,
because
let AJ Brown tell it. Jalen Hurts has also been not taking advantage of it. So I guess we really have to see.
but how the I guess it's it's two sides of the coin. It's if you're gonna run the ball, obviously the Eagles are gonna run the ball a lot, but that's gonna inform okay, I guess the Chiefs are kind of in a Sophie's choice of sorts. Basically, the pass rush has to win because otherwise, you're forcing yourself into a choice between selling out to stop the run or giving help up top, which means you're going to be giving up. I guess you'd have Connor playing deeper, and you'd have extra help in the third levels and stopping those explosive plays. But then, okay, do you want Saquon to frequently get 6 to 10 yards, or do you risk that one run,
Yeah.
even if you're getting stops, right?
Yeah,
uh,
I can't really detract from that. The Chiefs, just given the eye test of it all and watching their very boring games sometimes, I'll admit, um, they don't really give up a ton of explosive plays. Like where they
yeah,
lack on the offensive side of the ball, they're very disciplined in terms of those big explosive situations, which Saquon has been thriving in all year.
um, I didn't watch as much tape as I would have liked to, but I was also, I was just curious. I watched a little bit of tape of 57, and I was curious. I think, in terms of adjustments, I don't know if Spagnuolo actually will make any adjustments. I think for one, I don't want to be black and white about it, but I think Chris Jones will probably get home more often in this game than he did in 57. Just I don't think they're going to be bleeding, but he's going to get home once or twice, or at worst hopefully three times.
I knew
And
that
also,
I knew this Chiefs defense was going to be really weird and absurd when we saw it fucking engage 8 just get pulled out of nowhere. You don't see shit like that unless they're
Steve's running big engage 8 in 2025. um that is honestly hilarious that he ran engage 8
I
against
couldn't
Josh
believe my
Allen.
eyes. I was
He's sick in the head, man.
I said out loud, I was like, "Are we sure this many people are supposed to be running at the quarterback?"
Running at the quarterback at once. Oh my god. Um that's so funny, honestly. I want to hate this guy more, but he's honestly one of the best savants, and not just football, but sports that we have, honestly.
Best assistant coach ever. We've seen him as a head coach before, but assistant coach, Hall of Famer.
It get I don't want to say, but it really gives love of the game. Yeah, he's a sick person who just loves to watch the quarterback get sacked, right?
Whatever the mid level of Valhalla is, he's probably in that. He's not quite Hall of Fame, but he's somewhere in that weird spot where only sick freaks like that can get in.
um, I didn't have any notes, but I did just write the Chiefs need a great game out of just one of Jalen Watson or Chamari Connor, because I do think no L'Jarius Sneed in this game is interesting. I don't think it's a huge handicap, but I do think it's interesting because McDuffie was really great playing nickel and as a run stopper, and notably my big play of 57 was McDuffie on a very late disguise blitz. I think batting down or blocking a Brock Purdy pass that would have gone for a first down. That was with 2.5 minutes left in the game. Yeah, if you get if I'm Kellen Moore and I see Devonta Smith lined up against Jamari Connor, I'm attacking him. I'm saying, I fucking dare you, man. I dare you to win these one-on-ones.
I mean, that was my big X factor. Like, I wasn't sure that AJ Brown was going to get too much off of McDuffie because I thought that was really the matchup, and I thought they were going to try and throw a bunch of other shit at Devontae Smith, and I think that's where a big off a big offensive X factor is for them if Devontae Smith can overcome one of the other corners.
Yeah. Um, I think I trust Trent McDuffie and more than enough in that matchup that like he's not gonna like. I mean, he might. Like, I don't think he's gonna totally lock him up. But if you can spread the ball early on and then force like help or I don't know something, or maybe you leave AJ Brown an island and yeah, well you see how that creates a ripple through the rest of the secondary. I got a good footnote here. The Chiefs have rotated safeties on 45.8% of snaps through their two playoff games. In the AFC Championship, they disguised coverage on 55.6% of snaps. So I do think that'll be interesting to watch, like how they hand off receivers, like I wonder, like how zone or man heavy they get, and
Yeah,
especially like with the blitz, because I think man blitz against this offense is going to be asking a lot of including McDuffie and Connor and Watson, because at least one of Brown or Smith or Goddard is probably going to win those battles.
Goddard is a really glaring one because again I noted particularly in the AJ Brown matchup I slotted McDuffie there because we saw him go up against Nico Collins, who I'll admit I think is probably like right on par, and if McDuffie can contain somebody like Collins, I don't doubt
Mm-hmm.
for a second that he can handle a AJ Brown. Really, I think if Dallas Goddard can really target the middle of the field while AJ Brown and Devonta Smith sort of attack the numbers like they've been doing all year, I think this sort of opens up what they could do on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm gonna have a footnote before until we get to the Chris Jones of it all. Jordan Mailata has been left one on one on 85% of his pass blocks. Lane Johnson's been left one on one on 88% of his pass blocks. That said, Chris Jones is Chris Jones. Relevant to those stats, I will start with. He's played 176 of his 886 snaps this season at edge. Here's a crazy one. When playing outside, he has a 23.5% pass rush win rate. That is the second best in the NFL, man. Low-key crazy stat. Aiden Hutchinson is first. Do you want to guess what his number was? It's insane. You wouldn't guess it's real.
No, I
It's
don't.
38.4%. Jesus Christ. I know he got injured early on in the season, but Christ, man.
I,
Shout out Aiden.
I think he probably. I don't know. We'll get into the Lions when we get into off season shit at some point
I
down
just wanted to sprinkle it in there because, like, I could not believe when I read that. Like 30, even 30 would have been crazy. But 30, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Mm.
I guess like and this has been my big thing is like I think Chris Jones has a high capability of having his way with Jalen Hurts, and that's what terrifies me. That's why I emphasize the Saquon of it all, because we've seen Jalen Hurts look just terrified. They already don't operate him like at the line. They operate him mostly in shotgun. So like
That's
I'm
what, but again, like the Saquon of it all makes that okay. You
sure.
know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I mean that it certainly helps because without Saquon, I mean we're looking at like a good but not like transformative offense because we have
Yeah, yeah.
we have precedent for it.
I will say, like, yeah, to your point, again, I think Chris Jones is. I will be shocked if he doesn't get home at least once or twice in this game, or somebody gets home once or twice in this game. Um, but yeah, Hertz has not. He's actually looked actively worse when holding on to the ball longer. So I think, but in that regard, I kind of trust Kellen more to kind of
Well,
scheme
it,
the team out of that. Like,
And
look,
that's
man,
why,
you're gonna hit outside, you're gonna hit downfield, or you're gonna hit the check down, or you're throwing it away.
yeah, that's why I noted a lot of those when I looked at the Jalen Hurts chart of it all the last couple games, where it was really just a lot of short game work. Like there was a couple of like longer throws that I'm used to, you know, those stupid pieces of shit that ends up going to the numbers, never towards the middle of the field. But when I looked at the chart, I was like, wow, these are a lot of like pretty straightforward, like check down. They've got him looking like Derek Carr if he could run a little bit. Like it looks pretty simple, and I think that throws a little wrinkle in how the Chiefs are able to exploit Hurts. To be honest,
Um, Chris, yeah, I'm really interested in where Spagnuolo blitz Chris Jones in the first half, especially because famously he plays a pretty base defense in that first half, and he starts bringing out the sicko shit in the second half when he really needs it. So, but like I said, Jones has been elite from the edge as he has been from interior. So I think it's very likely we'll see him play at like every spot along the defensive line. That said, the weakness on this line is very clearly at center and right guard in Jurgens and Makai Becton. And so if I'm Steve Spagnuolo and Chris Jones, like I'm looking at, I got photos of them in my locker. Like I'm gonna fight these dudes.
yeah,
Like even the Chris Jones of it aside, like he does like to deploy those stunts, and so like I think that is one thing early on you can play and just like, look, we're not afraid, we're gonna go at you. And so again with like George Karlaftis, who I think quite is real like solid quiet pick to go off in this game.
right,
And
and
so I'm really curious.
that doesn't even account for like if they decide to double Chris Jones at some point, because then you really leave the
Yeah.
middle exposed for more things. Which is why I was curious, like, okay, do they shift a lot of their stuff wherever the fuck Chris Jones isn't so that they leave him catching up? You know, do you lean towards that tendency to go left in these Saquon runs?
hmm I'm sorry to speak this evil thought into existence, but it just like it's so vivid in my head. I'm really interested, literally, in the spacing too of the Eagles pre-snap, because I can see it vivid. It's like a memory that happened to me yesterday. Like if you have them in, whether it's bunt 3-by-1, whatever, like 2-by-2, whatever. If AJ Brown's like not, if he's not all the way out wide and he's a little closer to the line of scrimmage, you are gonna get, if this is like, you know what I'm talking. Picture this with me: early fourth quarter, crucial third down. You're gonna get that Trent McDuffie late blitz, and he's gonna hit the shit out of Jalen. Like
Yep.
you know it's gonna happen. And so I think it's really like it's like I, we talk up Spags because like he deserves it, but it's really like he has all the cards, and it's really like just when is he gonna play them? Really. All right. Oh, the Chiefs defense.
Yeah. See, the thing is I didn't find the most intrigue in like such dominance. I found like where the Eagles succeed to be interesting because I don't know how much of a factor it really plays. So, I mean, I think let me take lead on this. I threw down a couple of stats where I looked at again that they showed team insights where the two teams had distinct advantages, and the Eagles had a whole bunch of them. But when I really clued in on them, I was like, wow, none of this really has to do with what the Chiefs do on offense, and that's kind of like what worries me a little bit.
Oh, like that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I found particularly glaring was that um, the Eagles rank 22nd in the league when they're reacting to QB scrambles, where the Chiefs are currently
hmm
number two. Um, and likewise, I mean, they have a distinct advantage in deep pass coverage. But that runs kind of null and void because the Chiefs rank 30th in it, mostly because they're not that interested in running them in the first place.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trick coverage with Worthy, a lot of mid tight end throws, and a lot of short route schematics with whether it be Hollywood Brown or D Hop. So like I look at the what the Eagles do well, and I'm just curious how it converts in a situation where the team isn't really interested in like attacking that in the first place.
I'm glad you went that direction because we're rolling into the talking about the Eagles defense. I'd like to backtrack if I can.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to last year. You know, Patrick Mahomes is playing his first ever playoff game on the road, and they're playing the Miami Dolphins, notably who at the time had Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator. I would like to also point out, for very crucial context, This is a Miami Dolphins defense that was really great,
Hmm.
and for this very game was missing Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, and Andrew Van Ginkle. So the chances of them winning that game were not very high.
Hmm.
But there is an interesting thing Vic Fangio did in that game, and it's he played a decent amount of cover zero. Um, Mahomes against cover zero in that game, 18 dropbacks. He was pressured 10 times still. He went 7 for 18 for 74 yards. And so I'm really interested in what Fangio does because obviously, like, we live in Vic Fangio's world right now in the modern NFL. Too high this, too high that, whatever. Like, not to be hand wavy, but
Hmm.
But yeah, so he played cover zero in that game, like out of necessity of needing to create pressure on the quarterback, which he did. And so I'm really interested because, one, this is a healthy Philly team, so I wonder if that's like a wrinkle like a card he'll play at all, and also because, again, like, the D line is fully healthy, and this is a D line that rotated a lot throughout the season, but in the playoffs has been very firmly Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, and a decent amount of Milton Williams.
So I'll admit, I mean, I'm always a little wary when we talk about injury report stuff for the Super Bowl because I think a lot of the healthiness of it really is just a matter of the fact that they're willing to die on the field anyway. Like
Oh yeah, absolutely,
I'm a
absolutely.
little like when I see the injury report, I'm like, how healthy are we really talking here? Because I looked at the injury report beforehand and like whether or not they went to full practice or if they were limited.
Hmm.
Jalen Carter was battling illness; he was
Yeah,
limited. Devontae Smith has been limited in practice the last two practices due to the hamstring injury. Same with Brandon Graham, and we'll see how this affects Zach Bond. I think he has a groin injury, or if I remember correctly. But I'm pretty interested on how he responds to Mahomes, and namely, if Travis Kelsey has a pretty big game and if they'll attack the middle because of that.
I'm really interested in the kind of game Jalen Carter is going to have. Notably the Chiefs' offensive line, which was horrible. Well, sorry, at the tackles was horrible all season
Mm-hmm.
until they finally made like the huge gamble to play Joe Tooney at left tackle, which has worked really well. He's been obviously they've been notably weaker at that left guard spot, but now it's kind of stabilized that line, and so
Yeah.
I'm really curious in how they deployed Jalen Carter, like what matchups they try to get him in.
Well, it's
I got a
interesting because Will Anderson had a pretty big game against Joe Tooney in that Texas Chiefs game, and on the other side of it, Jawan Taylor had a great game against Daniil Hunter. But he's another one where it's like he has a lower body injury, and I'm just not sure if because he limited to Daniil Hunter for one pressure.
one pressure, yeah.
Is he ready to take on you know a Jalen Carter, whatever sort of formation they'll throw at him. And how much of this do you need to rely on Joe Tooney, knowing that you can exploit him the way that Will Anderson did?
Semi-related. Well,
Ultimately, I'm a little finicky about it because the Chiefs throw so many short throw situations. I think the run game is gonna be kind of whatever because of that. It's going to be a lot of short throw stuff. How quick can you get the ball out? And I mean, I'm pretty interested if they do that cheesy Mahomes scramble bullshit, considering that the Eagles are 22nd in
well,
the
I see, but I think the Eagles. Another reason I feel good about the Eagles in this game is, like, I think they are very well equipped to deal with the things that the Chiefs are good at. I mean, frankly, the Chiefs are the best screen team in the league, which is as much like functional, as much as like functional as it is like necessity, for like the talent they went into the season with. And the Eagles are the best at defending it. I'll say, in Patrick Mahomes' time to throw, time to throw. Last 4 games has been 2.5 seconds, which is, I don't have the numbers on that, but that's below league average. I can tell you that much. So yeah, screen game is going to be very important here. And I mean, they've essentially replaced their run game with the screen game. I can tell you for a fact that the Chiefs' run game this season is the lowest explosive run rate in the Mahomes era. Um, Good one for you. The Eagles are allowing 4.9 yards after the catch per reception. And specifically, Quinyon Mitchell, he's only allowing 1.5 yards after the catch as the nearest defender. So I'm really curious to see where the Chiefs' offense attacks specifically, because I don't think you can do it over on the outside against that guy.
Yeah, so that's where I had one of my general questions. I mean, where do you think that you line up Quinyon Mitchell? Because he in that Commanders game, he lined up with Terry McLaurin 36 out of his 48 of his routes,
Mhm.
which equates to 75%, and press coverage was on half of that. So, do you favor him on the Hopkins route running type of deal, or do you try and have him monitor the whatever worthy trickery they try and pull?
No, I think Mitchell. I think Mitchell has to play outside here. Kind of similar to how I said, you need to trust Saquon in the run game. I think you need to trust Quinyon Mitchell playing outside, because then that the ripple effect of that is you similarly trust Cooper DeJean to continue playing inside at nickel, he's been very good at nickel,
Mm-hmm.
and then quietly CJ Gardner Johnson, or not CJ, Reid Blankenship has been really great at safety. Actually, he's been lucky the quiet. I feel like one of the quietest parts of this defense.
Yeah, I did have. I spent my last bit of research looking at C.J. Gardner Johnson clips, which is pretty nasty to say out loud. But I looked at his numbers, and the Eagles made this pretty clever move to switch him out of formal slot formation, and instead they put
Yeah,
him in these linebacker alignments, or they'll put him in free safety situations, which I think is particularly inspired. There are still plenty of ample opportunities to pick on him. You've seen a couple of those, particularly at the start of the year, where Jordan Love was picking on him all fucking game, or namely Baker Mayfield, who is the Eagles' kryptonite, the way I see it. But it looks like they got them together later in the season, which seems like the story of the Philadelphia Eagles season anyway.
yeah. I think this secondary gels very well. I don't, like, on a personal level, I don't love CJ Gardner Johnson, but the strengths of all these other guys really minimize his weaknesses, which is are as like a primary coverage guy.
Yeah.
Which is funny to say for safety, frankly, but um, yeah, I guess just rolling into the Chiefs offense. I wrote one thing at the. I've got some notes for them, but I wrote one thing at the top, and it's kind of similar to the Eagles offense. You've earned it the hard way all season, and don't give up now. Short yardage, convert on third down, getting into the red zone on every drive, like make the defense work, get those guys tired. Though they haven't been as good in the postseason, frankly. Even just funny to say, even though they scored 30 points for like the first time this season against
It
the
was
Texans.
it was
Um,
pretty surprising considering that they had only been averaging like 22 points per game.
um, this might not matter, but I just want to put it out there. In the regular season, the Chiefs averaged 6.4 yards to go on third down. That is really great. I'm not a rocket scientist, but
Yeah,
in the postseason, it dipped a little to 7.9. So something to monitor is the early down play calling from Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. And also, I don't think anybody needs me to tell them this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Patrick Mahomes, he's scrambled to run on 10 of his 66 dropbacks this postseason. I'm not going to give you the percentage because it happens every year. The guy scrambles more in the playoffs because he finds the opportunity and he takes it. He's not a lucky guy. Or I guess he's lucky if you have my definition of luck, which is preparation meets opportunity. The guy's fucking smart, man. He finds the gaps and he attacks them.
yeah. Every once in a while, I forget that Matt Nagy is the one doing is the offensive
He's
coordinator.
not. He's not the play caller, to be clear. It's like
Yeah,
obviously, but it is funny that he's there.
it's funny that he's there,
It's
and it also
wait.
like
I'm sorry. No. You know what it is? It's the meme of the dragons. He's the- He's the
No,
goofy.
but like in a weird sense, it sort of reminds me of like when the Patriots were deploying like Bill O'Brien, where it's like, oh, I see where this offense is funky. Like that's probably the reason why you got this moron, pointing his finger at people and giving instructions.
um,
Bill O'Brien,
wow, random Bill O'Brien reference. That's crazy.
Bill O'Brien, I think about him maybe too much because of the Alabama connection.
Yeah, it is way too. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. You've got some trauma there. I understand.
It's all. I mean, he's probably the reason why we lost so many important games.
Back on the Mahomes of it, folding the Eagles defense back into here. I think what Vic Fangio specifically tasked Zach Bond and Oren Burks with will be kind of interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That is like how they respond in coverage and how they're deployed. If they're deployed at all with any specificity to Mahomes, like spying or yeah, like obviously Zach Bond, like he for my money he was 1A 1B for Defensive Player of the Year. So Oren, like if I'm Andy Reid, I'm looking at Oren Burks and I'm like, yeah, attack him. Like I don't care. I don't care if it's Worthy or Brown or Hopkins or Kelsey or Gray. I don't care if it's fucking Pacheco. Like yeah, we're gonna dare this guy to get to finish his tackles. We're gonna dare him to find guys in space if you have him playing zone coverage. Um, yeah, I'm really interested to see what Fangio does with that. Like if he respects like the Mahomes scrambling of it all, because for what it's worth, there's a world where Vic Fangio could be going to sleep right now. Hopefully, because it's late in New Orleans when we're recording this. But anyway,
You never know.
yeah, well, maybe Vic Fangio's an animal. It is New Orleans for what it's worth. um, yeah, maybe like there's a world where he's like, it's fine. Maybe every defensive coordinator in the world is like, he's not. They're doing the Arrested Development meme. It's like, like it
Maybe
just might work for us.
genuinely, given that they're so bad at reacting to the scramble all year, 22nd. Genuinely, and I'm just surprised no defensive player has had the stones to do it. Why don't you just take the fine and the suspension and just let this dumb?
If there was a game to do it, I guess is it right.
There's a game to do it. Lay his ass out. I guarantee you, whatever fine they're gonna be, like players will chip in to pay for that shit if it means taking out Patrick Mahomes.
We're gonna start circling back to a point you alluded to earlier in this pod. Xavier Worthy. Here's a good stat for you. He averaged 11.3 air yards per target. That was through week 13 of the season. Since week 14, including the postseason, 4.8. And so my only question is, which team will be more proactive in this? Is it going to be the Chiefs getting him open, or is it the Eagles trying to cover him? I'm really interested in. Like, are they more? I guess like on a cosmic level, like you don't want to say afraid because like our NFL players afraid of anybody, but like are they more concerned with Worthy or Hopkins as like the X
Yeah,
per
and
se?
I mean that's why I was like curious where McDuffie lines up in this sort of thing. Or
Yeah,
not McDuffie, God,
Mitchell. Yeah.
yeah, Quinion Mitchell. That's where I was most interested in where he lines up because, again, you have him so effective in these situations where it's like, do you want him to cover someone who's more savvier as a route runner and then exploit the downfield situations, or do you have somebody who can speed all over the place and you have somebody to hawk him the whole time? And how
Mm-hmm.
much do you trust Cooper DeJean and company to sort of fill Darius Slay to fill in where
Mm-hmm.
that gap
Mm-hmm.
lies?
I'm glad you brought up Darius Slay because I didn't bring him up, but I think I think having Slay and Mitchell is as good, arguably as good a cornerback duo in the league as there is.
Mm-hmm.
But flipping the card to the other side of this Xavier Worthy speak, he's gone in motion on 33.7% of snaps in the postseason, up from 18.2% in the regular season. And very relevant to that, Travis Kelsey's motion rate has dropped in that time. And the regular season is 29.2%. In the postseason, it's only 16.8%. And so I'm similar to how I'm really interested to see the first time that Kellen Moore calls like a pull run or like where like he wants Saquon to attack in terms of angles, like outside the tackles, or if they go gap, or yeah, if they pull a guard. I'm really interested to see the first time, because it's going to happen when Andy Reid has the Chiefs line up, probably in 3-by-1 in bunch, and you just know Xavier Worthy. It's like, oh, where is he going? Where is he going? Where is this ball? Where is this ball going? And so to your point, like, yeah, I brought up Oren Burks, but you brought up Cooper DeJean again. Like, yeah, with this specifically in the screen and short game, and especially with Worthy or the space he opens up, maybe, yeah, attack Oren Burks and Cooper DeJean. And also, I think the Chiefs, I think, will have to attack not downfield, but try to get into that second level, into the intermediate, like the 10 to 15 yard area. You can find Kelsey and Gray, or, you can find Hopkins and Brown in that area, because then you'll also be forcing Reid Blankenship into coverage rather than letting him play in the box,
Yeah.
as a run stopper or as a guy covering in the flat areas.
And this is why I was generally interested on like if Zach, how like fully ready Zach Bond is health wise,
Yeah.
because you can very easily attack the linebacker room with a Kelsey having a breakout, having a not a breakout game, but like a big game, since he's hovering around retirement, or if Noah Gray has a big old breakout and he becomes like the primary tight end in this situation. It really does depend, because I don't know how much you really want your corners defending these situations
Yeah.
without laid the fuck out.
I didn't, I don't know why, but something you said there made me think. I didn't write either of their names, but the funniest possible the outcome of this game is Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt having a really good game. Even though I'm fully expecting them to have like a 15 like combined like a 21 carries for like 73 yards kind of game.
For type of
Fully expecting.
like every yard counts is what Tom Brady's going to say on commentary.
Like, but like in this game, especially the way with how weird this Chiefs offense, or how functional, I guess, this Chiefs offense is, like, it's like it kind of is true. Like, if the Chiefs on the ground with Pacheco and Hunt and maybe even Carson Steele, but probably not if both Pacheco and Hunt are healthy, if they're averaging like 3.5 yards a carry, but it's always positive yards, like
Yeah,
like
just two of the like again, the Chiefs will thrive. Like just get the Chiefs to like 3rd and 6, they'll figure the rest of the shit out. Like just make sure
yeah.
that you're not going backwards and you're in a 3rd and 8 situation where they really gotta stretch to get that extra yardage.
I probably wrote too much for this, but I couldn't help myself, and I wrote a horrible headline for, or horrible title for this subsection, which was, "Could this be Marquise Brown's Hollywood moment?" Anyway, moving on from that, I do want to point out some very funny stats, which are funny specifically for Hollywood Brown. He's got a career. He's this season, obviously his first with the Chiefs, and he's only played about 3 games now.
Yeah,
Career lows in average route depth and vertical route rate. The route depth is 10.8 yards. 10.8. That's still pretty far, I
yeah.
think. And vertical route rate 28%,
I
which
mean, in
that was across 75 routes around him. But the
fairness,
interesting wrinkle in there for me was, well, shorter, so like they know not to like rely on him for like the like over the top. But 24% were outbreakers. And so to your point about that second level, especially with the linebackers, yeah, like I think even if he doesn't have a great game, like how they'll have to respect or respond to the kind of routes like he and DeAndre Hopkins run will be kind of interesting, because like even if they don't make like have a lot like have great statistical games,
this,
there's a world where they open it up for Kelsey and Worthy
yeah,
and or Mahomes in that scramble drill. Yeah.
yeah, or they end up, or he probably ends up having like a Keon Coleman type of game where like he gets like a short yard pass, but then it ends up breaking out to be like a
Like
20.
for Yak, yeah. I don't have the numbers on this, and I really wish I did, because it's one of my favorite things to bring up. But when and where Andy Reid decides to go with 11 or 12 personnel is really interesting here, and then who he deploys like in stack, because the guy fucking loves using trios. And then again, yeah, like we're motioning Worthy. Um, there's got to be a good prop bet for will the Chiefs send DeAndre Hopkins in motion? There's got to be a really good prop bet. Like, is it 0.5 or is it 1.5 even? Like, there's got to be something good. um, but yeah, I'm glad we're aligned at that, because like I like you don't say it just to say it, but there's a world where DeAndre Hopkins has like a statement game. Like he's been totally fine for this team, but if they don't respect like his game, like if they decide not to put Quinion Mitchell on him, or like they get him open with those like worthy like motion games,
I mean,
then there's a world.
this is the sort of thing that this is the sort of game that allows him to make like that Hall of Fame, cement situation where it's like, all right, like not only was I good with Deshaun Watson and Matt Schaub, but I was also great with Mahomes on the biggest stage, and I
On the biggest stage, like when you needed me. Yeah.
right. Even if he's not in like the prime of his career, like he still showed up when it mattered. So I think depending on if they deploy Mitchell on him or not, I think that'll say a lot in terms of what the Chiefs end up doing.
I'm not gonna lie to you, that's all I got.
Yeah, I got a section just for like predicting who wins. I would like.
Oh yes, of course. I'm so sorry. Like I sounded like I was wrapping up, but let's yeah, it's we've almost reached an hour here. It's time. The Super Bowl is this weekend. Um, let's put our cards on the table. I'm gonna throw the first stone, and I'm just gonna say I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't know if it's delusion, but I really think the Philadelphia Eagles pulled this off. I don't know. I don't know. It just kind of like it makes sense to me. Like a month ago, the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl made sense to me, but like having seen this Eagles team grow throughout the season and what they're good at is like it's not just I want them to win. Like it kind of just makes sense to me.
Everything that has made sense to me this year has ended up going away from me in favor. So, with that in mind, I will go with something that is always consistent year after year. I've got the Chiefs
I
winning.
don't blame you.
I've got
I
the
don't.
Chiefs winning in a pretty janky looking 21-17 game. Lots of
Oh wow, you think it'll be a grind? Yeah.
yes. I think it'll look pretty fucking janky. I think a lot of short form play calling. I think the most underrated thing that the Chiefs have done all year is just control the tempo. Like I'm gonna sound a little abstract here and like a first take commentator, but like they don't play the other team's tempo. They are always
Oh
going
no, yeah.
this
Like I think that's the scary part
slow
for sure.
form.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen them grind these games out all the way into the 3 minute mark in the fourth quarter where they drag the fucking possession out all the way until the last seconds. And I think it ends up being something like that. Their ability to take stock in the tempo of these games gives them a pretty distinct advantage. I'm not certain they're gonna want to get into a shootout with Philly either, and their defense is strong enough to resist that. Um, yeah, I mean, real bread and butter stuff. I think a couple of key stops in the Philly secondary will determine whether or not this game stays in play, or if this becomes another ugly, uh, uninteresting, pretty boring display of strong defense. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I really think.
Philly
Mm,
does have a distinct advantage on the rush. If Fangio and Sirianni call a strong, not Fan, I don't know if Sirianni and Kellen call a pretty strong run game, and if Fangio reacts well to Spat, I don't know why I
to
fucked.
Andy Reid, yeah.
Yeah, I fucked up my notes here, but Spag's penchant for strong pressure and Kellen Moore's ability to run with Saquon. I think I don't know. It'll really depend. It'll. I don't know. I don't trust Hurts to maintain composure in
The
this
fear,
situation.
see, that's the fear is seeping into you. I've got delusion on my side, man.
Yeah,
I'm purely delusional.
it's terrifying, man. Like because we've seen it. It doesn't help that it's something that we've seen before too. Like if it would be different if this was like a fresh team, a fresh set of play calling, then some things would be kind of up in the air. But because I've seen Hertz react to Spags in this way before, I'm kind of terrified how this runs again with a weaker offensive line. Again, this is very dependent on how Saquon plays and if he's elusive enough to get past. the most terrifying defense, even if the numbers don't always show it.
I have one last thing that I held on for this very moment. I don't know if you've heard this stat, but it's the funniest thing I've read all month. In this century, every time the Super Bowl has been played in between the two teams, that is one team traveling east and one traveling west, the team traveling west has always won. And what do you know? This year the Chiefs are traveling east and the Eagles are traveling west. I remind you, the Chiefs from Kansas City and the Eagles from Philadelphia, and they're both traveling to the state of Louisiana and New Orleans.
It's it's bad.
Teams are not the team traveling west are 9-0. So, for what it's worth, the flip side of that is this is the flip side of that is the Chiefs being the first team to buck that trend.
Yeah, I mean, really, how much do I want Jalen Hurts to lose, and how much do I want to thwart a dynasty? Is really the conflict that I have here. Do I want the Chiefs to make history that likely won't be repeated again for some time, or do I want you know Jalen Hurts to fuck it? Because Jalen Hurts ultimately is like, I'm gonna have to grapple with that QB ranking again because clearly he's shown enough things to where he's not in Tua territory. I've kept him in that like 10 to 15 Tua territory for a long time now, and I'm gonna have to eventually put respect on him. But it'll be really nasty if he wins, and then I gotta deal with the fact that this guy who can't throw towards the middle of the field is winning Super Bowls and shit.
um, to your fear and despair, I will simply quote Will Hunting from the movie Good Will Hunting, in which you might remember he references a scene in which his father asks him what he'd like him to beat him with, and he says a wrench, to which Robin Williams' character replies, "Why the wrench?" To which he, of course, says, "Cause fuck him, that's why." We're already here, man. Whatever. It's gonna be a three-peat, or honestly, I think it'll be really. Maybe I am fully delusional, but I kind of think it'll be a good game. Like, I think this is going to be a real strength on strength game. Like, I think we'll get as much of like some real like nasty defensive stops as much as we'll get like some explosive. Even on the Kansas City side, like I think we're going to get at least one explosive, whether it's from Worthy or even like the one big Hollywood Brown play in his first season with the Chiefs.
The one saving grace that I can definitely say is that this won't be like a Rams Patriots type of situation where it's just
Yeah, no,
screw.
like barring injury, like I think this is like yeah.
Yeah, I saw some real contrarians be like, Rams Patriots was a real defensive forward kind of game. You're not a real ball knower if you didn't like that. And I was like, pal, I got eyes, man. Like, I got hot wings right here. The fuck do I look like trying to watch 10-3?
I think that's so funny. I've never heard anybody defend that game because that game is just like, and obviously we like with retrospect and like even currently, like most of us love Jared Goff, but that was very much like yeah, younger Jared Goff shit himself, and younger Sean McVay shit himself because Bill Belichick went from I always forget how this game like changed their defensive alignment from cover 2 to 3. Do I remember that game correctly? I think I'm misremembering this, but and McVay had like no answer for how he prepared for that game, and obviously young Jared Goff just could not play under pressure in that game.
I would like to
I've
throw.
never heard anyone defend that game. That's insane. Why would you?
I would like to
That's
throw.
like that's like saying, oh, Patrick Mahomes actually should have beaten the Bucks even with half of his offensive line injured. No, nobody complains. Everyone's just like, yeah, it happened. Who cares?
Yeah,
It's like, who cares? It happened.
I would like to throw a bit. I would like to end on a really funny aside. I've seen a couple of funny ideas being thrown out. I think it was on ESPN where the dude was like, "I think the Lions should trade for Matt Stafford again for Jared Goff," and I was like, "Man, I kind of want to see that."
And
You're
where
like,
did that
would
bring
you
you?
like this back, please?
Where did that bring you back to me? Oh man.
That Jared Goff Commanders games really made me like depressed on a fundamental level. Mostly just because I was like, that commander's defense was not like even close to apex, and they still were like, yeah, no, you're not beating him, and you're damn sure not beating Jane Daniels, who I don't know. We'll get into the offseason stuff. The commanders fascinate me.
Well, to everybody and anybody, thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to a good game. I really think it will be. But before we sign off, I just want to give a very heartfelt thank you to anybody who has read, listened to, shared our content, or generally bothered or bullied us about football, because we enjoy that too. This is a labor of love, and we don't claim to be experts. We're just two dudes who love football and want to talk about it, and we're looking forward to talking more about it in the future.
Hell yeah.
You have plans for the game? I realized that I should have started with that.
I'll
Family doing anything crazy?
No, but I will say my job tried to convince me to do coverage for the game, and I made up an excuse. So I'm in a great position. They were like, fine, we'll just give you some pre-writes to do. I was like, that's fine. Just don't have me cover the halftime show and stupid gossip like Donald Trump going to the game.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I will be staying home, but we are ordering wings from Giada. Shout out, wonderful Italian American Los Angeles staple.
Wait, Gigiadas?
Yeah, Giada. They're doing a wing special for the game, which we're looking forward to.
I didn't know they did.
I
I
don't know
didn't
if
know
they
they did.
normally do it, but they're doing it for the game. So
Interesting, because they made me a sandwich that I'm still thinking about 2 months later.
oh,
That
don't.
that Dom Pepe is something crucial.
It's true for anybody still listening. The Don Pepe from Giada is quite it's
My
to
God,
keep it in sports terminology. That boy nice.
that's
All
a
right.
2018 Aaron Donald right there.
Mm, mm. All right. For the first time, or not the first, sorry, for the last time before a game is to be played this season, wherever and whenever you are listening, good morning, good afternoon, or good night. We'll see you on the other side.